Victory Monday, baby. Another one in the books. We're going to the sixth straight AFC Championship game. Trey, how does it feel? I can't believe we're able to even utter that sentence that just came out of my mouth, but that is exactly what's going on in Chiefs Kingdom, man.
Yes, it feels great today. I walked around work today with a little step going on, hanging
You're
around,
two-stepping
doing
around
my
every
thing.
corner. That chest was out a little extra. Got an extra inch
Yeah.
out on the chest today.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yeah, no, it feels good, man. It's that was a wholesome win last night. It feels good to I was worried about the Bills game, but it's just a good win. It's just nice to know that we dominate the Bills when it comes to the postseason. And I
You
mean,
didn't
here we
sound
go
worried
again.
in our live show, man. You were talking in certainties. Got me all sketched
Yeah,
out. I was like knocking on wood and shit.
well, I go through a cycle every week, like at the beginning of the week, I'm like, man, I don't know if we got this. And then we're like a couple days away from the game, I'm like, we can do this, this, and this. And then, day of the game, I'm like, okay, these guys will figure this out, playoff
Right.
Pat, Andy Reid, this guy's going to stand up, this guy's going to stand up, and we're going to make it happen. So I'm back in the cycle now. We'll talk Ravens later on in the week, but I restarted the cycle. I'm not looking forward to the matchup. I don't like the matchup, but it's the AFC Championship. We're going to get after it either way.
You
So,
got to play a tough team when you get to the last game in the conference. It's got to be a tough
yeah.
team. The Super Bowl is going to be a tough team if we get there too. I mean, that's the way this part of the season rolls, baby, and luckily we are not strangers to it at this point in time. We'll talk player of the game first, but quick shout out. We were at the Atlas Saloon on Sunday. A lot of fun out there. Obviously, we were there a little bit earlier than what the usual crowd is, so not as many Chiefs patrons while we were recording, but man, I know that environment was pumped up during that Bills and Chiefs game. That place is always a ton of fun to go watch a game. So if you're looking for a place this Sunday coming up, definitely make sure you go up to Excelsior Springs and check them out at the Atlas Saloon. Tell Keith and Jim up there that Trey and Dan from the Fastest 40 sent you up. So, player of the game, man, who do you have? Because I feel like, you know, this is a rare instance where we could have picked a few offensive guys over
Yeah.
any of the defensive guys. Not saying anything bad. You and I both have offensive players here. Um, but nothing bad against those defensive guys, but the offense just popped off, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, filled a gap there where defense has been consistent all year. I mean, really been kicking some ass. Where they had a tough matchup, and really it came down to bending, not breaking, and they did just that.
Right.
But just like you said, offense stepped up, and with my player of the game, I'm going Travis Kelce, Mister Two Things at Once, Mister Two Touchdowns in one game. I mean, he made it
Thanks.
happen. He made it happen, man. And how you leave a guy like Travis Kelce that wide open right there at the goal line, I don't understand that.
Oh, so
That was
nice.
obviously a blown coverage there, but Travis goes for 5 catches, 75 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Obviously, he was a nightmare matchup for my man Klein that was guarding him several times throughout the game. Specifically, I love the formation where he lines up right next to Pat in the shotgun. And because that matchup, almost every time if you have somebody wide out on that same side of the ball, then the corner is going to be on the wide out, and then you got a linebacker matchup and maybe a safety matchup on Travis Kelce there in the backfield. And I love that matchup. And Andy Reid did a phenomenal job of exposing that several times throughout the game. Travis Kelce did a great job of running those routes and really separating himself from the zone. But like I said, the man, I mean, he just dominated when it came to route running.
No, I love that pick. I think he was probably the second best Kelsey performance I saw that night, to tell you the truth. Jason, man, pumping the crowd up. Oh my gosh. It was like the battle of the chug that we saw at those Bucks games with Bakhtiari times 10. Dude
Yeah.
had his shirt off and was full on Chiefs Rager in the middle of Highmark Stadium. So
Yeah. Bills
love the
fans weren't
Kelsey support
sure.
out there.
Bills fans weren't sure if they should love him or if they should hate him. That's for sure. They're trying to figure
Well,
that out.
he flanked him, man. He's out there in the tailgate, in the parking lot, taking shots, being friendly, taking pictures, and then boom, pulled the switcheroo on him when we get in the stadium and game time starts to come up. But I
Yeah,
love that pick, man. It was vintage Travis Kelce in the playoffs here, and those
it
two
sure was.
touchdowns catapulted them ahead of Gronkowski Brady for
Yep.
most connections in playoffs between a quarterback and a receiver touchdown connection. So they're at 15 in their 15 playoff games together. So pretty awesome stuff from that. I love that pick. And I'm taking the other half of that tandem. So I'm going Patrick Mahomes for mine. 215 and 2 touchdowns is pretty pedestrian stat line for Mahomes' standards typically. I think he averages just a shade over 300 yards per game and like 2 and 3/4 touchdowns or something across the Bills playoff games alone, including that stat line. So everything that we saw from him, a little less on the number side, but his efficiency was off the charts, man.
Yeah.
9 possessions total for the Chiefs offense. They scored on 5 of them, and that includes the halftime kneel down and the end of the game kneel down with just one punt and a Mecole Hardman fumble on a short field. So super clean play from Patrick Mahomes throughout the game. The offensive line gets a lot of credit for this too, but his elusiveness in the pocket was vintage Mahomes, man. He didn't get sacked a single time in that game. There was a few times where he got some pressure on him. He was able to break out and make something happen. So everything I saw from 15 has me feeling really good, and it's telling me something pretty important. It's telling me that his performance against the Dolphins has less to do with the weather and more about what kind of stage he's on right now, which is that playoff stage. And we're seeing exactly what we need to see going into Baltimore for next week. So, happy to expand on that when we record again later this week. But damn, I loved what I saw from 15.
Yeah, that was phenomenal. That's a great point to where he is the tip of the spear when it comes to this Chiefs team, right? So we've seen the whole team really step up as a whole unit. There's been a couple guys who have dropped the ball literally in the last couple of weeks, but as a whole unit, this team has really stepped up and played up to the caliber that we thought the Chiefs could be this year. So I mean, look, Dan, let's get into it with that there. And I'm going to bring this in with Better Homes and Gardens, specifically Katie Lawrence, who is going to help you buy, sell, or build your dream home here in Kansas City, Missouri. If you're looking to do that or start the process, or you don't know what the next step is for you, be sure you're getting a hold of her so she can take care of all that dirty work in the background. And all you got to worry about is finding a perfect home for you. So if that's you, 816-868-1920, she's going to take care of you. Dan, with that, we get the dub 27-24 with a absolutely electric football game from the start to the finish. That was one of the better games I've watched this year for sure, but just another classic when it comes to Chiefs Bills postseason football. Last 3 of the 4 years, we've been the one to punch the ticket for the Bills to go on vacation early, and that's, my friend, is the sweet nectar for sure.
It's beautiful. It's honestly a work of art what we saw last night from the Chiefs, of course, but the Bills, they played a hell of a game too. Obviously, they made a few more mistakes than we did, which is what the difference was in this one, just a 3-point difference on the final score. And that's not to say that if Tyler Bass ends up making that kick that Mahomes doesn't march the field with, a shade under 2 minutes left to get Butker in a position to kick his own field goal. So loved adding a chapter to this rivalry. Loved getting to do it on the road, man. Like nothing's better. Don't get me wrong. Nothing is better than going to Arrowhead in the playoffs, braving the cold with all of your best buds, getting through a hard fought match, screaming your ass off, and then walking down the tunnel and pounding the tunnel and doing the chop on the way back to the bus. Like that is the number one feeling. But watching these guys go be the villain and steal something from someone else's house, that was a pretty good feeling. I'm not gonna lie. I did love it quite a bit. And it seemed like the announcers were hired from the home team a little bit too. You know, Tony Romo is definitely flexing a little bias on Josh Allen and the Bills, and you know, Chiefs Kingdom was not having it. I saw it all night on social media where it was like, you know, we are so sick of Tony Romo and what he's talking about here. But I mean, that was just kind of, I don't know if you noticed it. I was a little too fixated on what was going around me to even paying attention, but there were
Yeah.
a couple times where I heard him say, "Hey, Kansas City fans need to be worried here." And I was like, I don't know if I've ever been worried in a situation like that with everything we've seen from Mahomes. So I just
Yeah.
I don't want to take that advice from you, Romo.
Yeah, quite honestly, we're usually on the receiving end of that, right? Where it's like Patrick Mahomes playing, whoever it may be, and everybody's a Patrick Mahomes buff, and it's Patrick Mahomes this, Mahomes that, Mahomes this, and Mahomes that, right? So, I don't mind it. I don't really care. I think, honestly, I'm just not really listening to those guys either. We had 3 or 4 kids down here running around doing their thing, and
Yeah.
all under 4 years old. I'm just like, I should put the headphones in and listen to Mitch anyways. But
That's
um,
that's just what I was about to say.
yeah. But yeah, I think I'm not a huge fan of how those go anyways. I think they're trying to plug in too much shit into the game anyways. I just want to hear the play by play and
Right.
and watch the game and dissect that kind of stuff myself. So yeah, I mean he might have been out there hanging out with Jason Kelce pregame, hitting a couple fireball shots or something, because he was a little loose, man. He had some stuff coming out of the holster that I did not anticipate. Talking about 1,000 fans at his home that he plays in front of, and I was like, "What the hell is this guy talking about?" But that was interesting for sure. So it'll
He's
be
a little
interesting.
loosey goosey. I love that.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see who calls the games next week. I'm sure Tony's going to be one of them. He seems to be a top 4 guy for the NFL right now.
Yeah, he's a staple. I'm not entirely sure where the game is going to be broadcast, to tell you the truth. We can pull it up pretty quick, but something that was a highlight for me, one of my favorite parts about the game last night was that we basically, one of my favorite parts about the game last night was that we basically got a clean game from the refs. It was never a situation where, you know, you were in a key moment and you get this critical call for whatever the reason is. Like, they were letting them play for the most part. There were a few calls here and there, but I think one of the most important things about these playoff games is that, you know, the fans don't want it to come down to where there's some DPI that changes the entire trajectory of the game. I'm talking like the
Right.
level of the Rams and the Saints. And with the officiating talk
Yeah.
that was going into this game, that was a huge boost in my confidence for what the rest of the postseason can look like. And everyone was worried about Sean Hockley, what he was going to do in this situation. But you know, I was pretty happy with the officiating, and I feel like, you know, it was very, very nonpartisan for both these teams, if you want to put it that way. They let them
No,
play.
yeah, well said. And even as a Chiefs fan, I don't want to see us get, that dub off of a pass interference 50 yard down the field, right? If it
And it's
is
like a
if it's a
built-in
penalty,
excuse.
yeah, if it's a penalty, then call it. But I don't want to see that, and I agree 100%. I think the game was called fairly well. I think there was 2 moments, one being the forward pass past the line of scrimmage, and two, the how late the flag was thrown on the pass interference on Rasheed Rice coming across the middle. That was, I mean, I think they were almost going to the next play already, and then the flag came out, and I looked at Strato. I was like, holy shit, that is the latest flag I've ever seen in my life. But um, yeah, I don't know what happened there, but I agree. Overall, big success. I think it's huge that they let these guys play in the playoffs. And we talked about it before, where college football is dominating as far as officiating goes, where they let those guys really hammer out football and figure it
Hmm.
out themselves. And I think that was a step in the right direction last night for sure.
No, 100%. I mean, it was definitely nice to get that clean game on that side of things, because I feel like it's just been so frustrating for Chiefs fans and for football fans and as a whole.
Yeah.
So never want that to take away from the product on the field. I think one of my favorite battles on the night, if you're just looking at, like, just a complete showdown was Chris Jones against the Bills fans. It happened in warmups where, they're throwing snowballs. They're, getting into shouting matches with him from the stands. And he's just flipping them off the entire time, showing them the bird, F you, F off, all this. And watching their exchanges before and after the game was just hilarious to me because I feel like Chris Jones is usually like a teddy bear almost, with most of the stuff you see in pressers and his interactions with most fans. But that's something I would have expected if we were playing a game in Cincinnati, not Buffalo. I know I talked about it in our last show, but I feel like there's at least some level of respect there. But from what I'm seeing from former players, is Bills fans are kind of dirty.
Yeah, I think there was a lot of stuff leading up to this, with the different stuff that the Bills fans did out in the parking lot with the Bills painted, dick going in Pat Mahomes' mouth and stuff like that, and
Oh, good
Kermit the
Lord.
Frog was hanging from a tree, and there's just some kind of off the wall shit you definitely, I shouldn't say definitely wouldn't see at Arrowhead, but stuff you traditionally don't see at Arrowhead, right? I think we're a more of a group that's gonna kind of talk shit to your face, but not like a show.
But then we'll give you a plate of barbecue.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and maybe even a shot of Fireball or something, But yeah, that was interesting. So I think that led up to it a little bit, and it'll be there. I saw somebody call out today for Chris Jones to get fined and to have to be benched for the next game, which is for me is crazy. I'm kind of glad that they're letting these guys interact with the fans a little bit more. And as a fan perspective, we sit there and talk shit for 3 hours if you're there just for the game. If you're there for 3 hours before the game, you're talking shit for 6, and then another hour after it. Let's call it 7 hours. And so to let the players kind of interact and be a part of that, I'm a player for it. And we saw it with I think it was the Jets, the last game of the season. And one of their D linemen was like pointing at people, and he's like, "Yep, you," and he's like cussing all the fans out, whatever it may be. So, that set the standard as far as fines and getting benched or whatever it may be. So I don't expect anything, but I love
a fine,
it.
Sure, but if they bench him, that'd be a little crooked. I feel like that'd be a crooked Goodell move.
Yeah, I wouldn't put it past him.
Never would have thought I'd be the one bringing up Goodell in this show. So, one of the coolest things about this game is all of the playoff records that these guys are continuing to chase and break. We talked about Mahomes, Kelce, but Mahomes now has the most playoff wins in his first 7 years of a quarterback's career. LeBron stat kind of thing, call it what you will. But Kelce, I think his records are a little bit more impactful, the ones he's chasing, and it's not just like top 5 or top 3, it's number 1 all time in categories. So currently as it sits, he needs 7 receptions in the playoffs to surpass Jerry Rice for most receptions in the postseason. He's a little bit behind him with touchdowns and yards. Probably going to take another postseason for him to reach the touchdown mark, maybe 2 more postseasons to get to the yardage mark. If it's something that, and I'm talking long runs, like we're going to need to do this exact same thing the next 2 years for him to do that. But the receptions mark is very much there. The touchdown mark is within grasp, depending on how he performs these next couple, next game and potentially the Super Bowl. So if we take care of business. So those are pieces that he's kind of working on. 20 straight playoff games with 3 or more catches. That's pretty impressive. That's most all time in NFL history. And Mahomes, with his win, now sits 6th in conference games appeared in, tied for 3rd all time with Elway and Terry Bradshaw. So Elway and Terry Bradshaw throughout their entire career made 6 conference championship games. He's 1 behind the 3-way tie for 2nd place. Steve Young, Montana, Roger Staubach made 7. And then of course, you got the GOAT Brady at 14 that he's chasing. But for him to be at 6 appearances in 6 years as a starter and already tied with guys that have gold jackets, I mean, every single one of these guys, Brady eventually will have it, is incredible. It's absolutely incredible.
It is, man. And I think there's, I think there was a lot of conversation about Josh Allen, and yes, he is a phenomenal football player, but I think, you know, I don't think they can be compared side by side anymore, man. And I think, you know, despite what happened this regular season, Mahomes has to sit on a tier above these other guys that he's playing against, man. Well, what we've done consistently is unmatched. It's unmatched from these other quarterbacks, and that respect is due for sure. And these records are speaking for themselves. And are we going to drop off at some point? Yeah. Is it going to be this weekend? Maybe. We might not win this weekend. Will we go to the playoffs next year? I don't know. But man, this guy has been lights out. And Travis Kelce, I think he's solidified himself now as the best tight end to ever play. If that wasn't already solidified before the season started, and it's just not a question for me anymore. So what these guys have done already, both first ballots, but you know, for Mahomes, he's got many more years to make some things happen, and I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to Travis, you know, doing his thing for as long as we got him too. That's exciting stuff.
100%. And Brady gave Kelce and Mahomes a little shout out on social media. It was like, anytime you one up Gronk, you know you're doing things right. And you know, gave them that shout out, gave them their respect and their flowers. So you love seeing that from the now retired quarterback who, you know, took down Mahomes a couple times in the playoffs, unfortunately, but you know, that legacy is still going to be chased by him for sure. So a lot of cool stuff, a lot of history being made. I think one of the coolest aspects of this is, like, this is the first chapter or phase, if you want to call it that, in Mahomes' career, because it's always going to be known as that first run with Andy Reid, with Travis Kelce, all of them together. But then, and the next year or two or three, when Kelce decides to hang it up, that's going to be that next phase where it's like, what is he going to look like without him? Who knows how long Andy Reid's going to coach for? Maybe he leaves in that same time frame. Like, that's going to be chapter 2, when Mahomes has to maybe reinvent himself a little bit, or, you know, Rice will likely carry into that chapter with him as well, and potentially become that go-to guy. So a lot of exciting stuff in the future of Chiefs football. I mean, very, very fortunate fan base here after decades of struggle. I think we've kind of been paid back for that tenfold.
Yeah, no, I would do it all over again if it meant we got to do this again for sure.
No doubt.
Yep. All right, Dan, let's dive into the game a little bit here. Let's start with the defense. You know, we talked a little bit earlier about how the defense has really been the saving grace this season, where they've been consistent and you can match them up. Really, we're looking at the two best defenses in the league going against each other this weekend with Baltimore and the Chiefs. And this is a defense that we saw with a solid matchup against the Buffalo Bills, and Josh Allen played a phenomenal game. And really, the Bills' game plan was pretty similar to how they beat us last time. Ground and pound, control the clock, and make sure Pat Mahomes is not on the field for nearly as much time as Josh Allen is. And they did a phenomenal job at executing that. I will say Spags did a really good job of coming out in the second half and creating some more opportunities for that defense to be a little more successful. And again, like we've seen, carried on through the end of the regular season into the postseason, where this second half defense only allows single digits, man. And what they've done in the second half is absolutely incredible. And it's gonna be fun to see them matched up next week. But Josh Allen, 3 total touchdowns and led the team in rushing. Again, Josh Allen, freaking stud. You know, it's just week in and week out that guy makes phenomenal plays. And he's a great matchup. He really is. And this defense, you know, is kind of the Bills' offense had a great matchup for the defense, right? Our defense, and we talked a little bit at the live show, where we don't create those turnovers. We're more of a bend don't break, where we'll stay on the field for 10-minute drives, and then we'll get back on after 3 minutes of game time because Pat's already drove down or whatever the situation is, right? So that's a great matchup for the Bills, and they really took advantage of it they had 37 minutes of time of possession where the Chiefs had 23, right? That's a huge gap.
Right.
And on top of that, 4th downs, 2 of 3 on 4th downs. Obviously, they missed the crucial one where it was kind of an audible into a fake punt there for Damar Hamlin. but 2 or 3 other than that. And Bills offense looked good, man.
No, they did. They ran the game plan that we talked about in our segment towards the end of the live show, right? It was like, what do these guys have to do to win? And offensively, that key point was gash us and get after our run defense, which has been very middle of the pack this year. And in the first quarter, they had about 60 rushing yards on the ground. When you get to about halftime, we slowed them down a little bit, but then they came back out in force. And really, where the game plan fell apart for them was, what on the defensive side of the ball and what our offense was able to do. So, almost 5 yards of carry is pretty good. Pretty darn good. I think Josh Allen contributed a ton to that, but Ty Johnson was a force in his 7 carries too, averaging almost 7.5 yards a carry. I mean, that was pretty impressive. One of the things that was a little bit frustrating for us defensively, at least in my mind, is we weren't able to get this, finish the pressure. So we could flush him out of the pocket, no problem. But then he was making it hurt for us a little bit, converting some third downs, or that forward pass ended up counting for a lateral situation there. So not getting home, not completing the sack. I just expect a little bit more. I do want to highlight one defensive performance, because if I feel like he didn't really get talked about a ton, and you didn't notice him a ton other than, in those key moments. So Chris Jones gets stood up early on and deflected a pass that forced them into a field goal situation early in that game. And so I think that was a huge play, because that was a point in the game when the Bills offense just had, they were marching on us a little bit there. And so that was a little bit early on. And then, we also saw him come out and force that fumble a little bit later. Now, we weren't able to recover that. So unfortunately, Kincaid jumps out, pushes that thing out of bounds, and doesn't give us that opportunity. But the highlights you're going to see are going to be, what McDuffie was doing, what Snead was doing, what the linebackers were doing. Chenal himself had a really good game. But yeah, I just want to highlight Chris Jones a little bit, because he was getting a lot of attention there, and at times he was looking sluggish, and then all of a sudden he'd make a little bit of a play. So it was nice to see that.
Yeah, I would say with Chris Jones, man, I have a little frustration there, and it'll be interesting to see what the percentages of plays that they played. But I feel like every other time I was looking for him, he wasn't on the field. He's on the sideline, just standing there. It wasn't like he was hurt, or he was being evaluated, or he was getting coached up on something. He just simply wasn't playing. And so for me to be the number one guy and you're sitting on the sideline, it's a divisional round against the Buffalo Bills. It's crunch time. What are you doing on the sideline? Are you the guy or are you not? So for me, that's a frustration. I was honestly not happy with that at all. And I think that seeing that really solidified where I stand on how we address him this offseason for sure.
Well, I think with Spags, he's always going to put those guys in their best positions, in the best light, and try and highlight those things. And if there's an attribute of the game that's not really working, he's going to pull them. And so for Chris Jones, he's not really a run stuffer or run stopper kind of defensive tackle, right? He's more of that hybrid guy that's going to line up outside here and there, line up inside, bull rush you. But he's really not that run stopping kind of guy. And so I think a lot of the game plan in the second half involved pulling him out of there and putting in guys that are going to stop the run, like Mike Pennell or Wharton or anyone else that we were stacking up in the middle there. He just wasn't getting the job done there. So, that's not trying to excuse him for not having, the skill to do that job on the defensive line, because I think that's an important aspect. But I think that's good on Spags to pull him from that situation, so that we can get guys in there that are going to stop the run and are going to play well in that specific game, for that specific game plan. Because once we got him back out there and it was a passing down, he was fresh legs and ready to roll. So I think that's kind of an important aspect of it too. And I 100% see where you're coming from, being frustrated with that, because he's making so much money, right? And it's not even like, yeah, he's making money and he's getting paid this amount. It's about how much money that the team doesn't have from a cap perspective to pull in some other players. And we saw that happen with, the DeAndre Hopkins situation. So you want to see him out there as much as possible so you can reap all of that value. But I think that's good on Spags. I want to highlight Spags in that situation because he's putting the right guys in the right situation.
Yeah, I did you hear that from somewhere, or is that or is that just like your take?
Off the top, brother.
Nice, nice. I love that. Yeah, that'll be interesting. That's a good point. That's something I hadn't thought about. And so if that's the case, I do understand that. But again, if you have an all pro D tackle, he should be in the game no matter what for me.
I feel
But
that.
hey, let's actually a couple more points here, Dan, to talk about the Bills offense and how the Chiefs match up with them on defense. Kind of going into the time of possession thing here where Bills had 78 plays, whereas the Chiefs just got to 47, man. And it's interesting to see those guys continue to work throughout the whole game on offense for the Bills, where you always talk about defenses being worn down, but that offense just had to be beat up after all that, man. I mean, they're just getting pummeled out there from different guys across the Chiefs defense for sure. We got some hard hitters on defense and some pretty hefty guys for sure. But
Yeah.
Something I didn't think about until after the game was when you play that much on one side, when the game's that lopsided, and you're down 3 and you're trying to make a run down the field, like that makes it that much more difficult to do that. Go make a 12-yard or 12 play drive to win the
Right.
game. Like that is tough to do after already having, let's say 78 total plays. Let's say they were at 66 at that point and looking to go make the last drive. That makes it tough to do. And so that's another aspect of controlling the clock, the ground and pound that you got to think about, that if you're going to be down late and you need your guys to be, snapped in, focused, ready to rock and roll, these guys might be smoked by that point.
Right. No, that's absolutely something, and it looked like maybe the receivers were a little rusted, so to speak, in those situations as well. Diggs obviously dropped that big time pass that I don't know if you can't even really call it a drop. He just never, it seemed to me, never even tracked it fully. So and
No,
Josh
full
Allen,
fledged
credit to
drop.
him, that was a freaking dime.
Yeah, it was. Yep. Yeah, a couple of
So
them that were dropped for sure. I mean, he was
yeah.
dropping them in there.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So, definitely a little bit of a rust factor there. But on our offense, bringing it to that side of the ball, we had a few tough performances there too. And we'll just get McCole Hardman's thrashing out of the way. The guy had what, 2 touches for 2 yards and 2 fumbles.
Yes.
Luckily, we recovered one of them and ended up taking that ball down and scoring it. But to blow that field position up with the fumble through the back of the end zone when you're inside the 5-yard line is just inexcusable. Very frustrating, and it was close. Like, don't get me wrong, he was almost down. Like, if there's not replay, if this is 1970, they're calling him down and we're lining up for another play, but it's not.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Right.
so unfortunately, we lose the ball in that situation. And I mean, damn, he's a 5-year veteran at this point.
Yeah.
Got to be better at holding the football. And it's just been such a narrative for this team that the wide receivers are forcing turnovers. Hudson brought it up in our like hometown group chat, and I was like, you know what? I'll do a little bit of digging and just kind of find this out. And this was all just me reading stat sheets, but there was about 10 regular season games where receivers at least forced one turnover on our offense, whether it be a tip pass, a fumble, or whatever. And in some of those games, it was 2 times. So, pretty inexcusable to understand that that's what the history of our offense this year has been, and to come into the playoffs in that key moment and just lose all sight of discipline was frustrating to say the least, and it could have cost us the game. I mean,
Yeah,
simply
very
put,
well.
it could have cost us the game because that was the score ended up being what it was going to be for the remainder of that time. But yeah, that was a little too close for my blood for sure.
Yeah, yeah. That was one of those moments where it happens and you're like, this is how it happens. We should be up by 10 points at this point after a touchdown, but here we are up three. Josh is going to get the ball back. He's going to drive down, kick a field goal, score a touchdown, whatever it may be. And this is what we're going to look back on and say, why him? And to look at his play, the last regular season game against the Chargers, we were like, holy shit, man, let's get this guy the ball some more. Last week against the Dolphins, he throws up a stinker. And then this game against Buffalo, throws up a stinker. And so, at this point, I'm like, let's get Richie James in there, see what he can make happen. But yeah, I mean, looking at the McColl pickup as a whole, he was a panic. He was a panic pickup, anyways. Midseason, we were
Yeah,
struggling big time. We needed to figure something out.
someone
Maybe bringing a
familiar.
guy in who knows the system. Yeah, come in and maybe bring a spark to the offense. Wasn't the case. I applaud the try there, but AFC Championship. Let's move on. Obviously, the guy is not going to make those plays for us in the postseason. So, everything else from the offensive standpoint for me was a good nod. Offense looked great. Another great showing from, like you said, moving on from the Dolphins game where Chiefs fans were happy to see that, but we weren't quite sure that was going to be the same offense we were going to see again, right? Especially after the whole season that we had. But you got guys like MVS stepping up, crucial catches. He made some great catches in traffic and converting on third down, second down, and long, whatever it may be. And then you obviously got your guy Travis that we've talked about earlier in the show, where he took 5 receptions for 75 yards and 2 tutties, right? So you got guys stepping up to kind of point out another pass catcher that we saw pop off last week in Rashee Rice is he looked a little banged up. He took a couple shots,
Yeah.
looks like one to the leg, and it looks like he got the air knocked out of him at one point earlier on in the
Oh
game.
man, that looked
So
tough.
yeah, dude, those hurt. Those hurt for
Yeah.
sure. And he battled through. He still played the game, and it was good to see. And that's just a part of the postseason ball. You get banged up. If you can play it out, let's play it out. Let's go win the game. So I think that was a good overall experience for him. I don't think anybody expected Rashee Rice to go 100 yards for a touchdown every single game. I didn't. Still a rookie. Still going to learn that thing. And that was exciting to see. But another guy, Pacheco, man. I mean, just an absolute unit. Absolute unit. When he wants the yards, he goes and gets the yards. I mean, he went for 97 and a touchdown,
He's a
dude.
doer, man. He's a
He's
doer.
a doer. He's a doer. He's a doer. And he had one catch for 14 yards. So that's just a guy. I mean, Old Faithful, man. You need to get the ball. You need to run it hard. You need to get a couple yards. This is a no-brainer, dude. And it's going to be – I was really looking for the run game to transition a little bit to a power run team instead of the shifty – all the shifty stuff going on in the backfield. And we still saw a little bit of that. But,
Yeah.
Let's talk power, counter, power, counter. Let's run the ball heavy. Let's get nasty up there. We got a great O-line that can get the job done. And we obviously got a strong running back that can get it done as well.
Yeah, those interior guys are perfect for setting that up too. I mean, they're going to get a ton of leverage in there, and we saw it all game whenever we were giving Pacheco the reins. He had some big carries for sure in that one. So you love to see it. That last run on that last drive, you could tell he was so hungry, getting those 8 yards to put them in position to milk some more clock, force them to burn that last timeout, and get to a kneel down space. I think the best part about that was like the Bills had given up. The Bills had given up when they missed that field goal and we got that ball back right there in that position. The body language was bad. They didn't really once Pacheco ran that ball, you could tell they were basically lining up the same way they did when we kneeled the ball down 3 times in the game. So they just didn't look like they were in it in that last moment. And I love to see it. I mean, I was loving the physicality that Pacheco was running with. I was loving MVS finally getting catches. That was so huge. Vintage Travis Kelce. I mean, all these things together were just really huge for us and such a confidence
Oh yeah.
boost moving into the next stage of the playoffs here. And one of the things that I would like to see still better in the red zone, convert more touchdowns in those situations. But 27 points, man, you cannot be upset with that in a divisional playoff game. Mahomes, we know the stats whenever the offense puts up 27 or more traditionally. I think we're winning at about an 85% clip at that point. So pretty impressive stuff from the Chiefs offense. And I'm just feeling so good. Hope everyone gets healthy. We did lose Joe Tooney to a pec strain that came out today. So lucky there that it's not a tear of any sort.
Yeah.
So very happy
Yep.
about that. But all things considered, fairly healthy, but a few guys that you have some concerns about going into next Sunday, whether it's um, Willie Gay, Tooney, or our safety blanking on him, Mike Edwards. There
Mike
he is
Edwards. Yeah.
with the concussion. So
Yep.
love to see it. Love to see it. I'm excited to talk the rest of the playoffs in our next episode later this week when we preview Baltimore and everything that the AFC Championship game is going to have to offer. Um, Saw a few teams get eliminated in the postseason this week that put up some good fights. Packers, Bucks, Texans, all those guys did not expect them to. Honestly, the Texans maybe were the only team out of those three that I expected to move out of the wild card round, and they all put up a strong fight out of the outside the Texans, I guess, in that divisional round. So, looking forward to three more football games to wrap this season up. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. That's crazy. 3 games left.
RIP to the 23-24 season, man. Well,
Yeah.
I'm uh I'm ready to call this a show if you are, man. What a victory Monday. Very pumped about everything we have going for us here in Chiefs Kingdom. If you guys are out there, wear as much red as you can going into this weekend.
Let's do it, baby. Let's do it.
All right, go Chiefs.
Go Chiefs.
Peace.